Just moments ago, a federal courtroom went into complete shock as previously sealed evidence revealed an alleged secret relationship between Diddy and Kim Kardashian. Hidden messages, confidential testimonies, and one bombshell photograph sent the room spiraling. What started as a routine legal hearing quickly turned into a full-blown celebrity expose, live, raw, and caught on record.
This is the scandal Hollywood never wanted you to see.
The federal courthouse in downtown Los Angeles was uncharacteristically calm for a high-profile case involving music mogul Sean "Diddy" Combs. Reporters had already packed the gallery, but the mood was more procedural than explosive, at least, until 11:17 a.m. Judge Hallstrom, a composed man in his early 60s, had just begun calling the room to order when Assistant U.S. Attorney Vanessa Richter made a quiet but decisive move.
Without warning, she stood and addressed the court with a motion to introduce a surprise witness. Gasps echoed softly through the benches.
Even seasoned journalists leaned forward in their seats, fingers twitching over phone screens and notepads. This witness, Richter began, was added following late developments last night and is here to clarify personal communications central to the integrity of this case.
The judge raised an eyebrow.
Was the defense made aware? Diddy's lead attorney, Martin Greaves, stood up instantly. Your Honor, we object to the introduction of any witness that wasn't disclosed in the discovery phase. This is a blatant ambush. Judge Hallstrom waved off the objection with mild irritation.
Let her speak.
I'll decide admissibility. The doors at the side of the courtroom opened, and a slender woman entered, face partially obscured under a scarf and sunglasses. Whispers ran through the audience like a breeze through dry leaves.
She removed the scarf as she approached the stand.
The room collectively held its breath. It wasn't Kim Kardashian, but it was someone tied to her world. Please state your name for the record, the judge prompted.
Sasha DeWitt, she said.
Former executive assistant to Ms. Kim Kardashian from 2014 to 2020.
Greaves's jaw tightened. Diddy sat motionless, sunglasses on despite being indoors.
Ms. DeWitt, Richter began, can you confirm if you ever witnessed or facilitated communications between your employer and the defendant?
Yes, DeWitt said, her voice steady.
Many times. Text messages, emails, physical letters.
All discreet.
All private.
A slow murmur rolled through the courtroom. Greaves stood up again. We demand a sidebar.
Judge Hallstrom nodded, and both attorneys approached the bench. The conversation was muted, but the energy behind it was unmistakable. Richter spoke firmly while Greaves gestured animatedly, clearly trying to suppress something explosive.
Finally, the judge gave a small nod. He turned to the room.
I'm ruling to unseal select portions of the private communications log referenced by this witness. These materials have been reviewed in chambers and meet the threshold for relevance.
Diddy visibly flinched.
The gesture was small, barely perceptible, but it did not go unnoticed by the reporters in the front row. Richter returned to her table and clicked her laptop. A large screen flickered to life behind her, and the first page of a printed email thread appeared.
Sender, Sean.c@badboyinternational.com. Recipient, kimk@me.com.
Date, March 14, 2016. Subject, we'll need to be more careful next time.
The courtroom was stunned into silence.
Richter paused for a beat, letting the subject line marinate in the air like smoke. As part of the evidence log, Your Honor, we will show that these emails suggest a personal relationship and coordinated secrecy between Mr. Combs and Ms. Kardashian, dating back several years. Greaves was already flipping through a binder, likely searching for precedent or an emergency objection strategy. Diddy leaned over to whisper something to him, but the cameras caught the tension in his jaw and the tremble in his hand. Meanwhile, Sasha DeWitt sat calmly, watching the chaos unfold as if she had been preparing for this exact moment for years. Judge Hallstrom cleared his throat. This court is not interested in tabloid fodder. These communications better lead to something materially relevant or I will sanction both parties. They do, Your Honor, Richter said confidently. And what follows will explain why this was hidden, and why it now must come to light. As the email thread continued to roll, revealing more suggestive exchanges and vague meeting arrangements under initials and private jet times, the tone of the room shifted. The case, previously seen as yet another business-related legal scuffle for a celebrity, had just detonated into something else entirely. Somewhere in the gallery, a journalist whispered, "This is bigger than Diddy. This is Kardashian big." By noon, hashtags like #KimDiddyCourtLeak and #1minute ago were already trending. Phones vibrated in rapid succession. Media outlets were live blogging from inside the building despite court restrictions. Still seated silently at his defense table, Diddy turned his head slightly toward the screen. If there was defiance in his posture earlier, it had now morphed into calculation, like a man cornered, silently weighing his next 3 moves.
Greaves requested a recess. The judge granted 10 minutes. As the court officers escorted Sasha DeWitt out of the witness stand and the attorneys regrouped, the press gallery exploded with murmured theories and frantic typing. There was no mistaking it anymore.
This wasn't a legal case about paperwork errors or financial discrepancies. It had become a story of hidden relationships, sealed files, NDAs, and Hollywood secrets that were never meant to see the light of day.
And they were just getting started.
The courtroom reconvened at 12:12 p.m. with an almost electric atmosphere.
Reporters shuffled in with renewed urgency.
Several jurors exchanged glances as the large screen behind the prosecution's desk blinked back to life. Diddy, back at the defense table, adjusted his cufflinks slowly, deliberately, as if to maintain control in the face of spiraling optics. Assistant U.S. Attorney Vanessa Richter stood once more, her tone clinical but sharp. Your Honor, we will now introduce Exhibit 47, a set of email correspondences between Mr. Combs and Ms. Kardashian, obtained via subpoena from a third-party server cache and authenticated by a digital forensic team.
Greaves rose in protest.
We still maintain these emails are being misrepresented and taken wildly out of context. You'll have your chance for rebuttal, Judge Hallstrom replied. Let the prosecution proceed. The first email appeared on screen in bold, white letters against a black background. From Sean.c@badboyinternational.com
to kimk@me.com.
Date, July 3, 2015. Subject, meet discreetly. Body,
same place as last time. Same flight.
No press. No assistance.
Just us. We're the peach one. You know the one. Whispers erupted instantly from the gallery.
One reporter let out a quiet, stunned, "Oh my God," while another furiously typed on a Bluetooth keyboard. Even the court sketch artist paused, as if unsure whether to continue drawing or just watch. Richter spoke clearly. The phrase "same flight. No press. Just us" suggests an effort to avoid detection. This is not the language of casual business correspondence. Greaves leaned in to confer with Diddy, who maintained a rigid, stony expression.
He was sweating now, just slightly. Not enough to alarm, but enough to notice. The second email was even more direct.
From kimk@me.com
to Sean.c@badboyinternational.com.
Date, November 9, 2016. Subject, no cameras tonight. Body, I told Kanye I'm filming in Calabasas till midnight. Let's keep it fast and quiet.
The last time was risky. You could feel the air being sucked out of the room.
The prosecution let the silence linger. Judge Hallstrom briefly adjusted his glasses and nodded for the next message. From Sean.c@badboyinternational.com to kimk@me.com. Date, May 21, 2018. Subject, private jet, 3 p.m. Body, Gulfstream is ready. Driver will pick you up at 2:15 p.m.
No one knows. Let's keep it that way. No slip-ups.
A juror in the front row visibly shifted in his seat. Even the court bailiff, standing against the far wall, blinked a few times and looked away from the screen. The defense attempted a break in the momentum.
Greaves raised his voice slightly.
Your Honor, the defense intends to argue that these emails, while personal, were never illegal and are being introduced for pure sensationalism. This is tabloid theatrics, not courtroom material. Then you'll be expected to prove that, the judge responded dryly. Richter wasn't finished. She pulled out a printed transcript of text messages captured from a backup iCloud dump linked to a forgotten burner phone. Kim's old assistant had once managed it before the line was shut off in 2019.
One of the texts read, K, what if he finds out? S, he won't.
He never checks your travel logs. K, this has to end after can.
Richter turned toward the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cannes refers to the Cannes Film Festival in France. Surveillance footage, coming later, will show both Mr. Combs and Ms. Kardashian in Cannes that year, arriving within hours of each other under alternate names. Diddy finally leaned forward, elbows on the table, jaw clenched. He whispered something inaudible to his lawyer, who shook his head subtly in response. The prosecution displayed one final email, this time, with redacted headers from a server belonging to a law firm with direct ties to Combs Enterprises. From legal@andrewhowardlaw.com.
To kimk@me.com.
Date, January 12, 2019. Subject, documentation enclosed, Project Flame. Body. Attached are the finalized terms for the mutual non-disclosure arrangement. Please review the silence and privacy clause and countersign. Project Flame, Richter said, letting the name sink in. We'll revisit that phrase in a future exhibit, but let the record show that this document was embedded within a broader digital trail involving encrypted communications, offshore travel bookings, and scheduled wire transfers that we will later argue represent hush payments. A few camera lenses snapped into focus, illegally, since photography was banned inside, but someone always found a way.
Greaves stood again.
Your Honor, I must object again. None of these emails prove anything beyond personal communication. The prosecution is deliberately misleading the court into believing this was some kind of secretive operation when there is no context provided. The context is in the volume and pattern, Richter fired back, and in the conscious effort to hide it from spouses, media, and business associates.
Judge Hallstrom exhaled.
Enough for now. Both sides have made their positions clear. Let's proceed to the next witness. As the screen dimmed and the printed transcripts were passed to the jury, the room buzzed with a restrained sort of disbelief. No outbursts, no shouting, just the stunned silence of a bombshell dropped with surgical precision. Even the courtroom's wall-mounted clock seemed to tick louder. For Diddy, what was once a manageable legal skirmish now resembled a slow-burn public unmasking. For Kim Kardashian, still unseen, still silent, her name had become the courtroom's whispered ghost. And for the world outside those doors, the scandal had only just begun. By the time court resumed after the lunch break, the hallways outside were choked with camera crews and curious onlookers. The temperature had risen both outside and inside the courtroom, not from the sun, but from what was building inside that four-walled crucible of secrets.
The prosecution wasted no time.
Assistant U.S. Attorney Vanessa Richter stood with deliberate calm, as though she'd been anticipating this very moment for years. Her voice was steady, but there was an unmistakable shift in tone, like a blade being unsheathed slowly. Your Honor, she began. We now move to Exhibit 63, visual surveillance evidence corroborating previously discussed communications between Mr. Combs and Ms. Kardashian. Gasps were audible before she even cued the video.
The courtroom lights dimmed.
The screen glowed to life with the unmistakable grayscale hue of security camera footage. In the lower corner of the image, a timestamp read, August 17, 2017, 2:14 a.m., hotel costs, Paris. The image was shaky at first, tilted, like the camera had been placed in a hurry, but clear enough to identify the tall man in a dark trench coat, face obscured by a low-brimmed fedora and oversized sunglasses.
He walked with a guarded purpose, stopping just short of the elevator bay.
The camera switched angles. Now, from the opposite hallway, a woman entered, shorter, with a sleek silhouette, wearing a pale cashmere shawl wrapped tight around her head. Her walk was confident, but her eyes darted in every direction.
She reached the man.
They exchanged no words, just a glance, and then stepped into the elevator.
The courtroom froze.
A large red arrow labeled Subject 1, Combs appeared on the footage. A second arrow read Subject 2, K. Kardashian. Still images appeared on the screen beside the video, close-ups enhanced and brightened. One showed Diddy's distinctive diamond bracelet, barely visible beneath the coat cuff. The other, a blurred glimpse of the woman's side profile. Familiar cheekbones, familiar posture.
Richter let the silence settle like dust.
Facial recognition software verified Subject 1 as Sean Combs with 92% confidence. Subject 2 was verified as Kim Kardashian with 88% confidence, based on gait analysis, facial profile, and height ratio. Diddy turned his head slightly, eyes narrowing as if trying to mentally rewind the moment and undo it. Do you deny being present in Paris on that date, Mr. Combs? The judge asked, peering over his glasses. Greaves, Diddy's attorney, cut in. Your Honor, my client is not obliged to respond to speculative surveillance footage. But you don't deny it, the judge asked, sharpening the tone.
Greaves hesitated.
We are still reviewing the footage's authenticity.
Richter pulled up another exhibit.
Let me help.
Now came a second video.
This one from March 2, 2018, taken at Luton Airport's private terminal in London. The timestamp, 3:48 a.m. The same woman, face partially hidden by a hood, but the outline unmistakable, walked across the tarmac toward a waiting jet, her assistant trailing behind. 20 minutes earlier, another figure, Diddy, unmistakably so, had boarded the same jet under the alias Mr. Sean Clark. Richter turned to the jury. We have booking records, alias logs, and landing manifests confirming both boarded the same flight to Saint-Tropez, under separate bookings, but within 25 minutes of each other. Greaves stood, trying to regain footing. Your Honor, proximity does not imply intimacy. These could be professional coincidences. Celebrities often travel to the same places, on the same circuits. Then why the aliases?
Richter asked without turning. He paused.
Before he could respond, the prosecution played the final clip. This one had no audio, but it didn't need any. July 5, 2019, the Peninsula Hotel, Beverly Hills. From an internal hallway camera, a figure resembling Kim Kardashian entered the suite at 11:32 p.m., glancing back twice before closing the door. 2 hours later, 1:26 a.m., Diddy exited the same suite alone, hoodie up, phone pressed to his ear. Overlay text noted, room 1902, registered to Combs Enterprises. The still images were damning, not just for who was in them, but for how carefully these meetings had been orchestrated.
Different cities, different names, different times,
but always the same two figures orbiting around each other like well-practiced shadows.
The courtroom air thickened. Diddy slouched slightly.
Whether in frustration or fatigue was unclear. His legal team whispered urgently, flipping through folders, as if somewhere in those printed pages was a way to make the images go away.
But they couldn't.
A member of the jury coughed, breaking the tension only briefly. Another leaned forward, staring at the screen as if trying to memorize the timestamp, the faces, the frame.
Richter paused the footage.
All of this coincides with the timelines of the emails, the texts, and what the court will soon see, financial and legal documents attempting to bury any trace of this relationship.
She stepped back.
I rest the exhibit for now.
The judge sat forward.
Defense may respond during cross, but let me be clear, this isn't just about personal relationships. If this evidence links to obstruction, perjury, or any financial misreporting, we will expand the scope of this hearing.
Greaves nodded stiffly, his mind clearly racing for angles.
In the gallery, journalists quietly updated their headlines in real time.
Diddy and Kim, the Paris footage.
1 minute ago. It all changed. New video proof. Why they hid it for years. The judge ordered a 30-minute recess. As the court officers secured the room, reporters scrambled to the hallway to file their updates, their phones practically glowing with push notifications. Diddy didn't move. He stared at the blank screen long after the footage had ended, as if trying to see past it, into something else, some alternate version of events that no longer existed.
This wasn't just scandal. This was evidence. And there was more on the way.
The courtroom was barely settled after the explosive footage when Richter stood again, expression unreadable, a small folder in her hand. She placed it carefully on the prosecution table, her fingers tapping it once before looking up. Your Honor, she said, we now move to Exhibit 71, a confidential non-disclosure agreement allegedly signed by Kimberly Kardashian and prepared under the legal authority of Combs Enterprises. Diddy's legal team immediately stiffened. Greaves leaned forward, lips parted slightly, then whispered something urgent to his co-counsel. The ripple of tension from the defense table was unmistakable. This NDA, Richter continued, was discovered in a sealed document cache during a forensic audit of a private legal server used by Combs' personal attorneys. She handed the document to the clerk, who passed copies to the judge and jury.
Judge Hallstrom flipped open the first page.
Bold text stood at the top. Confidential Mutual Non-Disclosure Agreement. Code name, Project Flame. Dated, March 4, 2016. Parties, Combs Enterprises LLC and Ms. Kimberly Kardashian. Even reading it silently, the courtroom reacted. The name Project Flame, so previously cryptic in emails, was now clearly formalized.
This wasn't a private nickname. This was contract language. Richter addressed the court again.
We believe this document was intended to conceal the existence of a personal and financial arrangement between Mr. Combs and Ms. Kardashian that directly conflicts with statements both parties made under oath in other legal settings.
She moved to the screen again. A page of the NDA was displayed.
Paragraph 2, Section B was highlighted. 2B Silence and privacy. Both parties agree to refrain from any public comment, direct or indirect, regarding private interactions, physical encounters, shared residences, financial exchanges, or emotional entanglements, regardless of context.
The phrase emotional entanglements drew immediate attention. This wasn't a standard business NDA. It was deeply specific, so much so that even Greaves didn't rise with a fresh objection. Richter continued. This agreement also contains language allowing for legal recourse if either party discloses details of their relationship to media, government, or marital partners. On screen, the next section appeared. 3D financial penalty. A breach of the terms listed herein will result in a mandatory penalty of $10 million, payable within 30 calendar days to the injured party. A juror audibly exhaled. This is black and white evidence, Richter said. A structured arrangement to hide something. Not from business partners. Not from the public.
But from the people closest to them. And now, this court. The defense finally moved.
Greaves rose and approached the judge's bench.
Your Honor, we categorically deny the authenticity of this document.
There is no signed original.
Only a digital scan from a compromised server. Richter didn't even flinch. We have more.
Another document appeared.
This one was an email from Diddy's longtime attorney, Andrew Howard, dated March 5, 2016, the day after the NDA was created. From a Howard at howardlawinternational.com to s.combs at badboyinternational.com. Subject, NDA with KK. Body, as requested, I've drafted and finalized the Project Flame agreement.
She's signed. Your countersignature is pending.
We'll file originals in Lockvault folder 9A. Judge Hallstrom looked up from the screen. Ms. Richter, has your team accessed this Lockvault folder?
We have.
The original scans match the metadata trail from Mr. Howard's device. The digital signature from Ms. Kardashian was verified using her encrypted certificate from 2016.
Greaves turned red in the face.
Digital signatures can be falsified. But not when accompanied by video confirmation, Richter replied.
The courtroom sat still.
Richter continued, we recovered a short video file embedded in the same server backup. A low-resolution clip, timestamped March 4, 2016, shows Ms. Kardashian in an office setting with a legal pad and pen. She says, quote, I've read it, I understand it, and I'm signing because we agreed on discretion. You promised me privacy, not headlines.
The defense froze.
Diddy's expression cracked, if only briefly, jaw clenching, his fingers pressed tightly together on the table, nails indenting the skin of his palm. A faint click from Richter's laptop triggered the video. The grainy footage played. Silent but damning.
Kim sat across from someone off-screen.
A legal document in front of her.
Her voice was low but audible.
I've read it, I understand it, and I'm signing because we agreed on discretion. You promised me privacy, not headlines.
Then the screen faded to black.
The courtroom sat in stunned silence, broken only by the sound of frantic scribbling in the gallery.
Sketch artists couldn't draw fast enough.
Reporters mouthed, we have a clip. Judge Hallstrom took a long pause, then finally spoke. Unless the defense can present immediate and compelling evidence of fabrication, this document and associated media will remain admissible. Greaves muttered, we'll submit a motion to suppress based on chain of custody concerns.
File it before tomorrow's session, the judge said.
For now, the evidence stands. The jury looked visibly shaken.
Some leaned away from their folders, others leaned closer. They weren't just spectators anymore. They were witnesses. Richter closed the exhibit.
Let the record reflect. The NDA, the name Project Flame, the video, and the digital communications all support the existence of an orchestrated effort between these two high-profile individuals to conceal a personal relationship from their partners, the press, and now this courtroom. Greaves stood rigid, shoulders squared, eyes forward, but he said nothing. Outside the courtroom, social media had exploded. Screenshots of the NDA's language, the clip of Kim's voice, even mock-ups of Project Flame as a trending brand flooded Twitter, TikTok, and cable news tickers. The public didn't wait for verification.
The story had legs, and it was sprinting.
As the judge called for recess, Diddy slowly rose from his seat, eyes locked on the screen even as it faded to black.
He turned to his lawyer but said nothing. There were no more whispered reassurances. Just silence.
The unthinkable had happened. The veil had been pierced, the pact exposed.
And the most damning part? They still weren't at the climax.
The court reconvened at 3:05 p.m., but something had shifted in the air. The room was quieter, heavier. The courtroom wasn't just a place of legal proceedings anymore, it was now the epicenter of a cultural earthquake. Diddy's relationship with Kim Kardashian was no longer a whispered rumor or encrypted email. It had been substantiated, dissected, and broadcast.
And it was far from over.
Assistant U.S. Attorney Vanessa Richter returned to the floor, now holding a thick manila folder.
She didn't speak at first.
Instead, she handed the folder to the court clerk and motioned to have the witness escorted in.
The doors opened.
A woman entered, mid-40s, dressed conservatively in a navy blazer, her ID tag clipped to the front pocket. Her name, in small font, Stacy Valenti, former concierge supervisor at the Beverly Hills Hotel. She approached the stand with practiced composure. Her hands trembled only slightly as she raised her right hand and swore to tell the truth.
Richter wasted no time.
Ms. Valenti, can you confirm your position at the Beverly Hills Hotel in January of 2019?
Yes,
Stacy answered. I had been employed there for 8 years at that point. And on the evening of January 23rd, were you working the 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift?
I was.
I managed floor requests, suite coordination, and guest access on the upper penthouse level. Richter approached, now with a copy of a suite registry log. Can you tell the court who checked into suite 2401 that evening?
Stacy glanced at the sheet.
The reservation was under the name R. Monroe.
But I recognized the guest immediately.
It was Sean Combs. And did anyone else join him?
Yes.
A few hours later, Ms. Kim Kardashian arrived. A wave of hushed gasps rolled through the gallery like a ripple in still water.
Richter pressed on.
You're sure it was her?
I escorted her personally. She wore a large black coat and sunglasses. But when I greeted her, she lowered them briefly. It was her. The room tensed.
Was there anything unusual about the visit?
Stacy hesitated. There was tension.
I wasn't meant to see or hear anything, but as I turned to leave the suite after escorting her up, I heard raised voices.
Can you recall what was said? I caught only a few phrases.
Kim said, "You promised," and then something like, "This wasn't the deal." Diddy responded with, "It's bigger than us now," and told her to calm down.
The court went still.
Did either of them appear distressed? They were both standing close. It wasn't violent, but the energy was intense, like two people in the middle of something spiraling.
Did you report this to your supervisor? I didn't.
But the next day, I received a white envelope with $2,000 in cash, no note. Left at my desk, under a paperweight. I took it as a tip, but I knew what it was really for. Silence.
She nodded. Greaves stood abruptly.
Objection, speculation. The envelope could have come from any guest.
Richter turned.
The staff log shows that no other penthouse guest left a tip that night. And CCTV footage shows Diddy's assistant entering the back office hallway at 9:04 a.m. the following morning, with a white envelope in hand. The judge allowed it. The court accepts the testimony. Continue. Richter returned to Stacy. Is this the first time you've spoken about this publicly?
Yes, she said. I was worried about my job.
My NDA. But now, with what's already out there, I had to tell the truth. Thank you, Ms. Valenti. The defense passed on cross-examination, for now. Greaves remained seated, lips tight, fingers interlocked.
Richter wasn't done. She called up a screenshot on the projector.
It showed a room service receipt from Suite 2401. Date, January 23, 2019. Order placed at 11:41 p.m.
2 entries.
1 bottle of vintage champagne. Vegan dessert. No guests registered to that suite but R. Monroe. The order was signed by hand, illegibly, but the digital log registered the request from the suite's in-room tablet. Richter highlighted the line. Ordered by guest, Kim Kardashian, confirmed by hotel Wi-Fi ID sync.
Even the judge's brow furrowed at the level of detail.
Greaves finally rose. We object to the accuracy of IP tracking from hotel devices. It's unreliable and easily misattributed. Then you'll need an expert witness, the judge replied, without sympathy. Because that's solid chain of custody. Back in the gallery, a journalist whispered to her colleague, "We've got romance, betrayal, money, cover-ups. This is a script, not a trial."
Richter leaned in for the final blow.
The point, Your Honor, is that this wasn't a one-off meeting. The emails told a story.
The footage confirmed a pattern.
And now, eyewitness testimony gives us motive. This was a secret held tightly, until now.
She turned to the jury. They met here, under aliases. They argued. She expressed regret.
He begged for secrecy.
And then she was paid, perhaps not directly, but silently. This wasn't love. This was leverage. Gasps. Murmurs. A few jurors scribbled furiously. Others sat frozen, blinking. Greaves requested a delay to call a digital forensics expert, but the judge declined. "You'll have time to prepare, Mr. Greaves. But for now, we proceed." As the bailiff escorted Stacey Valenti from the courtroom, a strange silence followed her exit. She hadn't just confirmed a rumor, she'd lived it. And now, she'd pulled back the curtain on one of the most infamous hotel suites in recent celebrity memory. Diddy sat hunched slightly forward, his hands covering his mouth, as if physically holding in a scream. His lawyer patted his arm, but it barely registered. Outside, TMZ broke the headline in real time. Witness claims Diddy and Kim had secret hotel blowout in Beverly Hills, cash bribe included. Suite 2401 trended within minutes. But inside the courtroom, the truth had no hashtags. And as Richter sat down, flipping closed her folder, she knew this wasn't the end. The next face the courtroom would see would change everything. Because he was already here. Watching. When the court reconvened at 4:10 p.m., few noticed the figure seated quietly in the far right corner of the gallery. No entourage, no fanfare, not even his signature sunglasses. But there he was, Kanye West, hands folded, wearing a dark gray hoodie pulled low over his brow. The courtroom buzz dulled into a strange hush as word spread across the benches. He wasn't on the witness list. He wasn't scheduled to appear. Yet there he was, as if summoned by something deeper than protocol. Diddy didn't see him at first. His focus remained locked on the prosecution table. But when he finally glanced toward the gallery, his eyes landed on Kanye. The briefest flicker of recognition passed between them. Silent, restrained, deeply loaded. Kanye nodded once. Diddy looked away. Judge Hallstrom resumed proceedings. "We will continue reviewing evidence relevant to sealed communications and their implications. Ms. Richter, proceed." But Richter, for the first time that day, hesitated. Her eyes briefly scanned the gallery, landed on Kanye, then returned to her notes. There was no need to introduce him. His presence alone was a seismic shift in the room's energy. Instead, she played a voicemail recording, newly authenticated, timestamped April 14, 2017. The voice was Diddy's. "I don't care what he thinks. You and I, we handled it right. No press, no leaks. You made the right choice. And I got you, always." Then silence. The implication was immediate, and the subtext blared through the courtroom louder than the words themselves. He. There was only one he this courtroom now cared about. Kanye didn't move. His face remained a mask of stillness. But his jaw, tightly set, told a different story. A camera would have caught it in a flash, the locked tension, the micro-expression of betrayal just barely held in place. A reporter typed so quickly her laptop nearly slid off her lap. Richter cleared her throat. The he referenced in this voicemail has been inferred, based on the timing, context, and previous communications, to be Mr. Kanye West. She didn't turn to look at him. She didn't have to. He is not being accused of anything. But his proximity to the individuals involved, and the level of concealment they maintained from him, are relevant to motive, pattern, and possible obstruction. Greaves interrupted. Objection. This is pure speculation. You're now dragging an uninvolved third party into tabloid territory. Judge Hallstrom replied, "Overruled. For now. Continue, Ms. Richter. But keep your statements tethered to documented evidence." Richter nodded. "Very well." Submitted into evidence are a series of calendar logs and location pings from Kim Kardashian's mobile device, showing her at Diddy's property in Holmby Hills during period she was, according to Kanye West's own social media at the time, supposedly home with family. She paused. This data has been verified and will be included in the forensics report. Again, Kanye said nothing. But the courtroom was watching him now, more than the lawyers, more than the judge. One camera's lens tilted ever so slightly in his direction. The entire space had rearranged itself around his stillness. Someone coughed. Then came the real punch. Richter pulled up a private message transcript, recovered through subpoena from an encrypted messaging app used by Kim and Diddy between 2017 to 2018. The message was brief. "K, if he finds out, it's over. I'm not losing everything over one mistake. D, it's not a mistake if it never sees daylight." A ripple of shock passed through the room. Even Judge Hallstrom leaned forward. Greaves stood slowly.
We demand immediate verification of these transcripts. This is a smear campaign built on interpretation and suggestive phrasing. Richter didn't flinch. You'll have the chain of custody report in your inbox within the hour. This was verified by the digital archives of the app provider, under court order.
And still, Kanye didn't react. But he didn't have to.
The court sketch artist, positioned diagonally across from him, captured it best. The folded hands, the pursed lips, the intense stillness of a man who has just seen the final piece fall into place.
The moment was spiritual, devastating, biblical. His silence was louder than any testimony.
Richter didn't press further. She stepped back, satisfied. She had introduced the unseen force behind the curtain, the one whose absence had made the secret possible, and whose presence now made it impossible to ignore. As the judge prepared to call recess, the courtroom doors creaked. A court officer leaned in and whispered something. The judge nodded solemnly. For the record, Mr. West is not a party in this case. But given the relevance of the evidence and the public speculation surrounding today's revelations, I will permit Mr. West a single statement, should he wish to clarify his position.
The room inhaled sharply. Kanye stood. But he didn't approach the bench. He didn't ask for MIC.
He simply said, loudly, clearly, I always knew.
Then he turned and walked out. The heavy wooden doors shut behind him. That was it. That was all he said. And it was more than enough. The courtroom sat stunned for a full minute. No motion.
No objection. Just the aftershock of those 3 words detonating across the press, the jury, and the defense. Diddy leaned back in his seat, hands over his face.
Not crying. Just crushed. Collapsing in real time.
Outside, Kanye's departure sparked a media frenzy. Within minutes, headlines raced across the digital landscape. Kanye breaks silence. I always knew. Kim Diddy timeline blown open. Kanye's statement confirms worst fears. I always knew trends as social media reacts to Kanye's courtroom exit. And inside, Richter finally sat down, her voice no longer needed. The silence said it all. Because silence, now, was the most undeniable truth of all. By the following morning, the courthouse was surrounded by a fresh wall of reporters. Helicopters hovered above like vultures. Social media was still in the grip of Kanye's 3-word bombshell, and cable networks cycled through dramatic reenactments and slow-motion footage of his courtroom exit. But inside, the mood was different, tense, uncertain, and ready for combustion. When Diddy entered the courtroom at 9:03 a.m., he was visibly different. Gone was the calculated cool he wore like armor in earlier sessions. Instead, he walked stiffly, suit wrinkled at the collar, eyes bloodshot, and jaw twitching. His lawyers flanked him, murmuring last-minute advice. He didn't seem to hear a word. He took his seat, barely glancing around. Across the aisle, Richter waited. There was no folder in her hands this time, only a flash drive. When she rose, the entire room instinctively leaned in. Your Honor, she said, her voice razor-sharp, we now present Exhibit 83, an audio voicemail, previously withheld due to pending authentication, but verified last night by an external forensic team.
She inserted the drive.
This voicemail was left by Mr. Combs on Ms. Kardashian's encrypted business line on July 9, 2019, the morning after the documented Beverly Hills encounter.
A click. Then, Diddy's voice filled the courtroom. Kim, I need you to calm down.
Look, we both knew what this was.
You're panicking.
There's no footage, no leaks.
I kept my word. I'll protect you. I'll take the heat if it ever comes out. You just stay quiet.
I'll handle the rest.
It wasn't angry. It wasn't pleading. It was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that implies control. Command. A man rehearsed in secrecy. Gasps. One juror dropped her pen. The judge didn't speak. Richter didn't need to. The audio spoke for itself. At the defense table, Diddy stirred. First a flinch, then a slow, almost imperceptible shake of the head. Greaves stood, but Diddy reached out and grabbed his sleeve, stopping him. Let me, he muttered. The courtroom froze. No one had anticipated this. Mr. Combs, the judge said cautiously, you are not required to speak. But Diddy was already standing. Slowly, shakily. I need to say something, he said. To the court.
And to everybody watching. His voice, though cracked, still carried weight. The judge nodded once. Proceed, briefly.
Diddy turned to the jury. then the gallery. Then, finally, to the prosecution's table. Look, yeah, I sent that voicemail. I said what I said, he began. I made decisions. Bad ones, maybe. But I didn't break the law. He took a step forward. Me and Kim, we had history. Complicated history. But not criminal history. We were two people caught up in something we didn't plan. And yeah, we kept it quiet. Who wouldn't? He looked directly at the judge now. But don't stand there and make me out to be some manipulative monster because I wanted to keep my private life private. That voicemail? That wasn't a threat. That was protection. I was trying to shield her from this circus. Richter rose, but Diddy raised his voice. You think I wanted this out? You think I wanted her name dragged through this court like it's a soap opera? I built an empire. I didn't do it by being stupid. But I'm not evil. His voice rose again, too loud this time. I kept my mouth shut for years. I covered my tracks. He stopped. Too late. The slip had already happened. I covered my tracks. That sentence hung in the air like a noose tightening in real time. Richter's eyes flashed. She didn't even have to speak. The courtroom collectively realized what had just been said. Admitted. The judge raised his hand. Mr. Combs, enough. You've said more than enough. Greaves tried to intervene, pulling at Diddy's arm. But the damage was done. From the gallery, someone whispered, he cracked. In the back corner, a journalist mouthed the words he just confessed to a cover-up. Diddy looked like he realized it, too. His eyes widened, not in fear, but in the slow-motion recognition that something irreversible had just slipped from his lips. I didn't mean, he started, but the judge slammed his gavel. Mr. Combs, return to your seat. Now. Diddy obeyed, sinking into the chair like a man underwater. Greaves leaned in, whispering with urgency. Richter simply sat back, quietly triumphant, as if watching a chess match end with an unforced blunder. Within seconds, court officers were whispering among themselves. One passed a note to the bench. The judge read it, nodded grimly, and looked up. Due to the defendant's voluntary statement indicating possible knowledge of evidence concealment, he began, this court will now consider expanding the scope of this case to include intent to obstruct justice. The room exploded into noise. Camera shutters fired. Reporters leapt to their feet. A court officer shouted for silence. The judge pounded the gavel twice more. Order! Order! But the courtroom had already transformed into a media hurricane. On Twitter, breaking alerts surged. Diddy slips, admits to covering tracks in open court. Obstruction charge now possible after Diddy's emotional outburst. He said it trends after courtroom shock moment. Meanwhile, Diddy sat frozen, the full weight of what he had said descending upon him like a concrete slab. This was no longer just about Kim. This was no longer just about secrets. This was about obstruction. About the law. And his own mouth had lit the match. As the court adjourned for the day, the final image was unforgettable. Sean Combs, once a symbol of unshakable cool and untouchable power, slumped at the defense table, staring into nothing. He hadn't been destroyed by a judge, or a prosecutor, or a jury. He'd been undone by 6 words. I kept my mouth shut for years. By the time court adjourned, the entire street outside the federal courthouse had transformed into a flashing sea of microphones, satellite trucks, and camera crews. Anchors broadcast live under makeshift tents. Drones buzzed overhead. Social media had reached critical mass. Hashtags like #DiddyandKim, #CoverUpConfession, and #1 minute ago were trending in over 40 countries. But inside that building, where secrets had unraveled with surgical precision, a different kind of storm was brewing. Sean Combs remained seated at the defense table long after the judge left the bench. His hands were steepled in front of his mouth, but his expression was blank, beyond anger, beyond denial. Greaves hovered beside him, still trying to piece together legal strategies, but even he looked like a man already bracing for the fallout. Across the room, Richter calmly closed her laptop, methodically placing each folder back into her briefcase. She hadn't cracked a smile, but there was no mistaking the satisfaction behind her eyes. She had spent years building this moment, and now it was public history. The gallery emptied slowly. Reporters filed out in controlled chaos, already dictating headlines and recording voice notes. Outside, it was a war zone of press and speculation. The moment Diddy admitted to covering his tracks, everything changed.
Sources say Kim Kardashian is refusing to make any direct comment until her legal counsel completes a review of the evidence. Diddy's PR team has gone into emergency mode, issuing a blanket statement denying criminal wrongdoing but not addressing the NDA or voicemail evidence.
Meanwhile, Kim's team released a 3-sentence statement.
Ms. Kardashian is aware of recent developments in the federal proceedings involving Mr. Combs.
She will not be making any further public comment at this time.
Ms. Kardashian remains committed to her family and her privacy.
The press ripped it apart instantly.
Analysts dissected the lack of denial, the careful phrasing, the ghost of truth hiding behind the neutrality. Back in the courthouse, the judge issued a media memo stating, "Given the heightened public interest and evolving scope of evidence, additional hearings will be scheduled to review the possible obstruction charges. Previously sealed documents may be reopened, pending legal challenges."
Translated? More bombs were waiting.
By noon, dozens of civil lawyers had filed appearances. At least 2 former assistants tied to Kim's business ventures were now reportedly cooperating with investigators. One anonymous source claimed a former bodyguard had offered encrypted chat logs in exchange for immunity. And then came the leaks. On a private Telegram group frequented by Hollywood insiders, a document surfaced, allegedly part of a Plan B drafted by Diddy's legal team years prior. It detailed how to suppress damaging personal content via strategic NDAs, payments to former employees, and offshore server deletions. The media branded it the Silence Playbook. Within the hour, a special report aired on cable news. An alleged reputation management strategy tied to Combs Enterprises may have been activated as early as 2016, following initial rumors of involvement with high-profile celebrities, including, notably, Kim Kardashian. Conservative outlets framed it as the unraveling of Hollywood elitism.
Tabloids called it a betrayal scandal.
And influencers?
They turned it into content gold.
On TikTok, creators posted breakdowns, reenactments, even dramatic voiceovers of Diddy's courtroom confession. #views surpassed 600 million by evening. Meanwhile, Kanye's 3 words, "I always knew," had become a cultural tsunami.
Memes flooded every platform. His face over Shakespeare. His quote on inspirational backgrounds.
Even bootleg t-shirts were being printed with the phrase in Gothic font. And then came the most unexpected ripple of all.
Corporate fallout.
3 brands tied to Diddy issued public statements distancing themselves from the scandal. A premium tequila label cancelled its upcoming collab launch. A streaming service paused negotiations for a biopic. And 2 former bad boy artists began sharing cryptic tweets about NDAs they had signed years ago. Suddenly, the courtroom wasn't the only battlefield.
It was brand damage, career implosion, legal expansion. And Kim?
Though physically absent, she dominated the narrative. Paparazzi caught her leaving a building in Calabasas, phone clutched tight, eyes covered behind massive sunglasses. That image, a single still frame, became the defining visual of the day.
Twitter captioned it,
"The face of a woman who just watched her secrets spill worldwide." Later that night, Trevor Noah opened his show with a line. In a single week, Diddy went from bad boy for life to guilty by voicemail.
But the joke barely landed. The story was no longer funny.
By 11 p.m., a federal spokesperson confirmed that a grand jury would be convened to review potential charges of obstruction, witness tampering, and conspiracy to conceal evidence. The case that began as a routine inquiry had morphed into the biggest celebrity legal spectacle since the O.J. trial.
But this time, there were voicemails, emails, footage, and silence that roared louder than words.
Back in the courtroom, files were being boxed up, sealed again, temporarily. Reporters lingered outside, hoping for one last comment from Richter or a member of Diddy's team.
None came.
As the courtroom lights dimmed, the final image burned into public consciousness was of Diddy, shoulders hunched, being led out a side door, unseen by the cameras, but caught by one photographer through a fogged window. The photo went viral. Captioned simply, "He blinked." And just like that, the man once known for empire and control had become a cautionary tale. Not because he loved.
Not because he hid. But because he spoke when silence would have saved him.
The world kept spinning.
Screens kept buzzing. But for those at the center of it all, one truth remained.
In a courtroom built on secrets, all it takes is one slip to bring down a kingdom.